Welcome back to the Daily Dollar. This is episode 13, and Art has wine.
We got wine on this episode, guys. So
We've got wine.
It's a Friday night. This is how we spending our, well, for y'all it ain't a Friday night, but we recording on a Friday night. The beans are spilled. But we got the wine out, man, so we can give you guys a bomb episode. Not that they weren't good without wine, but
No, we might make this a thing.
wine makes everything better for sure.
Yeah, so pour up and get ready for some real estate talk.
Get ready for some real estate talk. Let's go. What you got?
All right, so we have been talking a lot about leverage. First of all, just can you give me a quick summary on what leverage means?
So leverage is like, the best way I can describe it is like a seesaw. If you guys know what a seesaw is, like two kids sitting on the end of a seesaw and like they go up and down. Each person on the other side of the seesaw has two things going for them. They have their weight that pushes the seesaw down, and then they have their legs that push the seesaw up. So that's two things that each person has to bring to the table in order for the seesaw situation to work. Sometimes if you're having a really good time on the seesaw and you're with a buddy who has the same weight as you guys can try to do the thing where you try to make the seesaw float and balance, right? So if you think about leverage, I want you to think about the seesaw. It's usually two people on different ends of the spectrum, both maybe with a common goal, maybe with a different goal, but one person has more power and control over the whole entire situation, and that is what I call leverage. Okay. So like the actual definition of leverage is like, I mean, I can look it up, but it's like...
No, you can't. Your phone is recording this,
my
so
phone's
I'll look
recording.
it up.
So yeah, pull up leverage. The actual definition, because you can leverage, you can use like... Leverage, okay, boom. The exertion of force by means of a lever or an object used in a manner of a lever. So that's what I was thinking in leverage, right? Like you stick a stick under a rock and you push down on the rock and it lifts the rock, right? Mm-hmm. In real estate, obviously, the term leverage, or not even real estate, finances, the term leverage, I can read it here. The ratio of a company's loan capital, aka debt, to the value of its common stock or equity, aka cash versus debt, right? We're not talking about that kind of leverage, right?
No.
Yep, yeah, I didn't think so. That's why I didn't want to go that route, because it's kind of confusing.
Yeah, we're talking about leverage in the sense that we've been discussing it. Last episode, we talked a lot about leverage.
Yeah, leverage. So like, yeah, I mean, I use a seesaw. You can use a stick and a rock, or like, what would be a lever, right? Mm-hmm. Where you would like put a stick under a rock, because I can't physically pick up the rock. Like the rock's either too big or too slippery, or I'm just not strong enough. But if I get a stick under there, my same strength can move that rock by pushing down on the stick.
Okay.
So that's leverage in a sense of, in real estate is like, if I'm partnering with you or if we're negotiating, I really use it in a negotiation term, because in negotiation, you negotiate when they're on the other side, meaning if it's a seller and you're the buyer or whatever. Negotiation you can use with a partner when you're trying to figure out exactly the terms of your partnership. So that's why I always speak leverage in like a opposition type of a situation.
Yeah.
But I don't want you guys to think leverage is a negative thing. It's really just like, what you bring to the table versus what I bring to the table, and how this seesaw or balance beam looks as we pile on what one another brings to the table.
Whenever I think of leverage, and this sounds crazy, it almost sounds negative, but like who holds the most power is like the way that I look at it.
I mean, yeah, or in the seesaw analogy, who holds the most weight? Mm-hmm. So, because power almost means nothing in leverage, if that makes sense. Leverage is power, is what I'm saying. So like if you and I are partnering, it's like, all right, let's do a thing right now. Let's leverage this podcast.
Okay.
Fun activity I just came up with.
Okay.
So if we get in an argument over a decision to make over the podcast, how are we going to decide how that decision gets made?
Talk it out.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to use leverage. If we weren't together in a relationship, we would use leverage to decide who's the decision maker, who again has the power over the podcast ultimately. Which, guys, that's a bad practice to have. You should have an operating agreement or some sort of writing about this before you go into it. So let's do a more friendly exercise.
Okay.
We're just starting this podcast. All right. Who's the boss here?
Me.
I think I'm the boss. Why do you think you're the boss?
Because this is my project.
No, see, we're using leverage. We're doing an activity. And speak up. Don't get all nervous now. Why do you think this should be your podcast?
Because I'm the one who has to hold the accountability on the podcast.
Accountability. You're not the one who has to do anything. That's what we're deciding now. But
okay.
You're saying you can bring accountability to the table. Mm-hmm. Okay, I think I can bring more knowledge to the table.
Okay.
Keep going. We're leveraging.
So
that's 1-to-1. Come on.
Willingness?
Willingness to do the podcast?
No, like to edit, and I do like the descriptions. I make sure they're posted up on time. I publish them.
Got you. So you would say you can offer more muscle or more sweat equity into the podcast, more time.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have time. My leverage would be I have more marketing strategies. I know how to grow the podcast.
Okay. I come up with the most topics.
You come up with the topics. I have a better podcasting voice.
You do have a better podcasting voice. I ask you the thought-provoking questions.
Okay, so you interview.
Yeah, a lot of the times.
Gotcha.
So far in our 13 episodes.
You can spark the conversation.
Yeah.
Conversation sparker.
Yeah.
Okay, I can...
I got a good one.
You got a good one?
I got a good one. No, you go first.
We're running out. What's the score here? How much leverage do I have?
We're tied
3?
right
I
now.
think it's 3-3.
Yeah, we're tied.
And you have a good one? See, I gotta come up with one. This is where the leverage comes in. I think I can... I wouldn't say fund the podcast, but that's kind of unfair. I think I have more. I don't want to say. Yeah, I say creative direction.
What does that mean?
Creative direction, meaning like I know big picture where to take the podcast. So you might have the small things.
I don't know. I don't think I agree with that because I'm a very podcast oriented person. I listen to podcasts. I know how to.
I'm a very business oriented person.
It's different.
It's different.
It's different because most people who start a podcast just start a podcast, and eventually, like if they do blow up, it just blows up.
Okay, cool. And what's your last thing that you had? Your Joker card.
I am more relatable, I think.
All
so
right.
I think the people would.
Wait, why do you think you're more relatable?
Because you talk in terms that people don't necessarily always understand, and I think that I can put it in a way, like in a story form, that's
so
just
you have
a little
a more
more
relatable delivery. You're not a more relatable person.
I think I'm also more relatable.
Anyway, right? So look, so Cait would win that battle, right? I think it was like 5-3 by the end of it if I, let her take the one. Where it really was 5-4.
All right, so we're tied here.
But either way, no, but Cait would have the leverage. So in that battle of what you bring to the table, Cait would ultimately assume control over the podcast. So now we would say, okay, because Cait has more leverage, meaning if she left the podcast would lose more than if I left the podcast. I'm easier replaceable in this podcast. Cait has more leverage. She assumes more power. She is ultimately the decision maker in the podcast. And if you're negotiating a partnership agreement or an operating agreement, she would probably have more equity or ownership in the business, property, opportunity, LLC, partnership, whatever. She would have more stake or more equity, more ownership in. So congrats. You just out leveraged me on episode 13 of... What's the name of this podcast again?
The Daily Dollar.
The Daily Dollar by United Home Relief, guys.
Yes.
So if you want to learn more about leverage, obviously, UnitedHomeRelief.com. We have a course there that we talk about it in more real estate terms, but this was like leverage for dummies.
Yeah, that's great because honestly, this episode was supposed to go into something completely different,
We can save that for the next episode.
But we'll go into that, next episode.
All right, sweet. That was try that with friends and family. Try that activity.
Don't bring that to the Thanksgiving
A friendly
table.
go back and forth of like, who actually runs this family? And then go back and forth with the leverage. Anyway, I'm Art Morrison III here.
I'm Cait McCready here.
Like, share, subscribe, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Come on, bro. You just trying to out-leverage me on the outro? Like, I'm clearly doing the outro.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Anyway, catch you guys on the next episode. Peace.
See ya.